All right. We are we are back. Hey, look, we are back. All right. We're currently hiding all of the mistakes that we're making with the hello screen. But if you're with us, excuse my voice. I keep losing it. Every time it almost comes back, I start yelling at something, sometimes the sky or children. I'm teasing. Happy New Year and welcome to the Home Education Foundation's podcast, HEF podcast. The Home Education Foundation is an organization that was started by Brenda Dickinson back in the 90s as she helped take care of home education law and protect parents' rights to educate their children the way that they feel is best. We firmly believe that God has blessed all of our parents with their children and that it's up to them to choose and be the decision makers and to be empowered to make those choices, and that the government does not own our children and is not responsible for them, but we are. And that is what we fight to protect and maintain and empower parents in that arena to do so. We work with legislators, representatives, senators. We work with school board districts and home education offices and athletics associations and directors all across the state and many, many more. We're constantly building relationships and working behind the scenes in ways to protect parents' rights and ensure that when they have an advocate, when they need an advocate, they have one. My dyslexia is kicking in. We'd like to take a moment to say thank you to our top sponsors. These are corporations who come in, companies who come in, and they donate to us to help ensure that we are able to do the work that we do. Our title sponsor is Arete, and we also have Fisher Precious Metals on board with us, and we're excited to potentially add a couple of more that are on the horizon. And there are some who are eligible to be considered top sponsors, but they just haven't designated to receive that recognition. So know that there are people there. We also like to take a moment and say thank you to all of our parents who come alongside of us with their monthly donations, whether it's $5 or $10 or $25 or $50. There's different tiers on our website under the support area. We see you and we thank you. I had someone who over the holiday season, their card had accidentally lapsed, and I messaged them just gently and was like, hey, we loved having you support us. We're glad to have you, with us. But if there's any way for you to come back at any point in time, you know that you're welcome. And if you need anything from us, we're here. We don't charge for our services. We're simply here to help parents. And it was almost immediately they had re-upped and just didn't realize that it had gone down. And we have such a wonderful community of supporting parents and families who believe in the work that Brenda has been doing for the last 40 years and the work that my wife and I are preparing to carry the torch and take over for her. And I guess, welcome to 2025. How are you, Brenda? Good.
Podcasts and stuff like that. The one that I did, the first podcast that I did, I was in.
Oh, she froze for me. Did she freeze for you?
It froze for me too.
Okay. Well,
Give her a second. Maybe she'll be back.
yeah, we have been experiencing technical difficulties this morning. I think I accidentally fat fingered the exit button on the entire streaming platform
Had to remake the whole thing.
right as we were about to go live. Oh man! And then she's freezing up now too. So she's out of town and visiting family and friends, and beholden to their devices and Wi-Fi. It could be that it rebooted on itself or something. It could be anything. There she goes. We'll welcome her back when she gets back.
Hopefully she'll be back. Oh, there she goes.
And there she is. Welcome back.
Sorry, this is a mess. So I'm borrowing.
You're quite all right.
um, from a friend, and I don't know what happened to the connection, but I'm back. So the first um, one that I did from Washington, a live stream, about 10 minutes before we got on, I poured boiling water all over my hand and
Yeah.
wrist. So it's
Oh
healing
my
beautifully
word.
with
And
all
by
the,
the way,
look at
if
that.
if
There's a couple of little spots there, but it's all new
it
skin.
looks so much
Looks
better.
beautiful.
By the way, if any of you
That's
missed
impressive.
when we mentioned this previously, Brenda did not tell us that she had poured
No.
boiling water on her hand. She just
No,
got on
she
the live stream like normal, and we didn't know until
and
much
laughed and
later.
chatted.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, you
Yeah.
do what you have to do, you know. I had ice
You're a
cold towels on my hand, hoping that it would take the heat out. So I did that for about a
you're a
week.
gem of a woman with an
Help.
amazing constitution. I love you. Uh,
Ah,
that's
so
why you've been able to do this for 40 years.
yeah, you just grit your teeth and keep going. No, actually, the Lord has just been so awesome in removing mountains when it seemed an impossible thing for us to get
Mhm.
something accomplished. And Jason's seen a little bit of that as we've been walking the Capitol. When somebody you need to see, you can't get in, and then suddenly they are there in the hall as you round the corner.
It's wild.
So but
It's wild.
people don't realize you have to be in the Capitol.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen while you're sitting at home in South Florida following the legislative process. You have to catch them before or after a committee meeting because sometimes you can't get in to get an appointment, but
Mhm.
you can walk them to their office.
Yeah.
So, having a lobbyist in the Florida Capitol is essential for home education rights. Sometimes the legislators are hit by somebody that wants to tighten down the law or have more accountability. And with a face that they recognize, I've had legislators on several occasions catch me in the hall and say, "What do you think about this? Somebody has asked us to have the superintendent choose the evaluation method." And I said, "Well, we have 5 evaluation methods, and it seems to be that parents should make that choice." And they said, "We thought that's what you would say." So it never saw the light of day. But without somebody to stop it and that they recognize who that person is, and Jason's going to be way more recognizable than I am with his beard.
I don't know
but
about that. I don't know
but
about
he'll
that.
become the spokesperson, and I'm so happy that Jason and Crystal have joined us. It's a brand new
Yeah.
year, and I am so excited. Jason is clearly on top of the issues that are going on. We discuss the pros and cons and the words, the specific words that need to be put into play, but we
Hmm.
listen to parents that have a problem and try to help them basically work through at a local level if that can be accomplished with school boards or superintendents. If that can't be taken care of at a local level, then we begin to use our contacts in the Florida Capitol to be able to have the legislators change the law or make a telephone call. Sometimes a phone from a legislator, your legislator, will move mountains. So we just sort of
Yes.
know the strategies that can be used and how to go about trying to accomplish what a parent needs for their child. And you mentioned that I started it back in 1991. Actually,
Mm.
my husband was alive at that point, and he created the Home Education Foundation legally, with all the paperwork and everything. But when he passed away in 92, it was up to me to pick up the torch. And I did not want to. I was not an attorney. I'd been not trained in all this stuff. But what the Lord calls you to do, He gives you the ability
The
and
equipping.
equips you
Mm.
for the task. And
Wow.
so I've learned to read laws and look at the ramifications. And sometimes the Lord has just given me the ability to read it and think, oh, in 5 years it's going to be this, or in 10 years it's going to be that. And then try to make the changes initially so that we don't go to further regulation. And that's, that's one of our important goals that we have, is to continue the freedom that was established back in 1985 and keep the home
Mm-hmm.
education law free from intrusion into parents' homes, and
Mm-hmm.
require more. I've said this over and over, but some people may be joining that have never heard this before.
Right.
But Florida is not an education state. Florida is an attendance state. So, home educators, the attendance is not even keeping hours and days like the schools are required to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's you sign your child up at the beginning of the year with the letter of intent, and then it's assumed that you're going to be doing something with them every day because they're in your care. And good parents who home educate, they don't have a choice. Their kids are begging, they want to learn. And if you don't get in the way, they're
They
going to
will.
learn. And
That's
so
right.
it may be at night at the dinner table or after dinner playing games, or
Yeah.
first thing in the morning. My son used to wake me up running in the morning when he was in about second grade. Mom, give me some word problems. We didn't even have curriculum back then, so I was responsible for making up math word problems.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's almost impossible to stop kids from learning unless you intend to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway,
Yeah.
so we did convince the legislators of that fact. And so the letter of termination that parents turn in, or their annual evaluation, denotes the end of that attendance year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, the evaluation is for the purpose of having some accountability on parents, but nobody's going to tell you what curriculum to use, how often you have to do school. We don't believe school is necessarily education. Um, it does
Ooh.
happen during school
Say
that kids
more.
get some education, but
That's right.
not all kids receive the same degree of education, even though they're sitting in the same classroom. So we just believe that kids are unique and that parents have the ability to customize the education that that child needs for him or her. And we
Mm-hmm.
just want to protect those rights.
And to know the right moment. I was just talking to a parent earlier today who, during COVID, became aware that her children were being sent home specific worksheets, teaching them things that the parents didn't want the child to be taught. They had been very careful to guard their minds and hearts with the television shows. They pre-watch the shows and the books that they read and various things like that. And the parent starts to see some of this information come home, and they can choose an alternative path if they're in public school or a private school or any of these paths. It's an attendance state, and you have options, and the parent should always be the one steering those decisions and empowered to make those decisions. No one else should be able to step in and know better for your children what they need than you. And that's there. We see it often in various places where it's like, well, what kind of education or what kind of degree do you, what kind of qualifications do you have? And I think that every mother gets to laugh at that. Like,
Oh, they teach them the potty train them. They teach them the English language, or if you speak Spanish, the Spanish
that's right.
language. And, you just have to
Yeah.
teach them colors and all the things for
Yeah.
kindergarten. I mean, you're always teaching. It's just the
Yeah.
question, what are you teaching?
Oh, beyond that, I have a tiny little soapbox where Crystal and I talk about this once in a while, where I'm like, I don't understand why we even celebrate birthdays. We celebrate the child. Every birthday should be a celebration of the mom. That's my opinion. That's Jason Crawford's opinion. Okay,
The
this is
moms
not law,
would
and I'm not
probably
lobbying for
agree.
this. But I think that it should be a celebration of the mothers, and what an effort, and what a duty, what a destruction that happened to your body, and a rebuilding and a recovery afterwards, and then a dedication and a sacrifice from that moment on. I think that birthdays should be when the child is able to have special time with the mom and gift something to them to thank them for life. And that's an opinion, all right. But in the same vein, I think that it's very important that we reorient our minds not to just accept what systems tell us to do or put upon us or are just there because they've been there for a while and we've not known different. I grew up and there was a public school right down the hill that we walked to. You don't know any different. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we need to question those things and we need to kind of make some shifts and changes that um, are, or at least feel confident in what your selections are and what you have the rights to and how those rights are protected. I think that's very, very important.
Just a side point on the
Go
comment
ahead.
of, what degree, what qualifications do you have? I was just having a conversation the other day with a parent where I was explaining, like, I love learning with my kids. I don't know everything about every subject, but I don't
Right.
have to because I'm learning
No.
with them. And I think as long as you have some basic understanding of how to communicate with your children and how to, be in the moment with them and how to make things fun for them, all the rest of it you can learn with them. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm having a great time homeschooling. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work, but I'm having a great time.
It is. I
That's
think
a
that if,
very excellent point, Crystal.
yeah, I think that if
I
a mind
remember.
to, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was
No,
going to say when my children started doing college, and finished home education, the greatest regret I had was, oh shoot, there were more things I wanted to learn. I don't really have an excuse to go search all those things out.
yeah, yeah. It's a very valid point. I think that if a mind to rhyme and two right feet were enough for MC Hammer to make Hammer Time, then a parent with a mind to learn and a left and a right hand is plenty for them to help their children learn how to become critical thinkers and questioners and curious for knowledge, especially in a time where it's at your fingertips. It used to be that information and higher learning was locked away into a handful of people who knew it or had it, and these institutions that were put together to kind of collect it and share it, but for a fee, of course. And now it's in your pocket. It's at your fingertips. You have to navigate it safely to protect your children while they're online, but there's so much that if they're guided, the answers are there, right?
Well, I think
Teaching.
education is more than memorization of facts.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's
Oh yeah.
celebrating with the child the love of learning.
Those
Mhm.
And
aha
so
moments.
teach them where to find the information and
Yeah.
how to
Yes.
How
dig
to find
deeper.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, dig
Yeah.
deeper into something that they ask a question. I think basically curriculum is set up for the middle part of this classroom where some of
Mhm.
the kids are above that and gone on further. But I used to hate it when we get into a subject in school and we learn just enough to have a base of information. But I wanted to know more. I
More.
wanted, but we didn't have time. We had to pursue the next, subject matter. So in home education, if you're interested in electricity
You go
and
through
how
all that.
all of the magnetism and everything like that works,
Yeah.
because I like science,
Yeah.
you dig in and you do experiments, and
Or how
when you
worms poop.
when you run the course and you've learned everything there is to learn, you move on to another subject. It isn't
That's right.
limited to, oh, this 6 weeks we're going to touch on, and then
Yes.
when you get to the next.
Oh, she froze.
Oh no.
No, not again. God bless her. She's on a roll. Moment of silence. Hello, Katie Lane. Welcome. I'll catch up on some comments here while we're waiting for her to come back. We thank you for being in Tallahassee at all. They're in Tallahassee for all homeschoolers. Good morning from Tampa. Good morning, Dina. Christina was saying amen to something that Brenda had said earlier. I should probably stop. I don't like to interrupt her while we're doing this, though. And then thank you for listening to the Lord, Brenda. We all stand on your obedience and sacrifice. Over the years, our freedom is owed to you and Craig. That's beautiful.
Yeah. While we're waiting for her to come back.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is.
Welcome back.
Welcome
I'm
back.
sorry. Keep listening. connection with, I wasn't moving or anything.
You were on
Oh
such a
man.
roll with what you were saying.
Yeah, you were
I
doing so
was
good.
on a roll. But I forgot what I was rolling on.
We
You were
were,
talking about going deep into subjects.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I just like pursuing the whole idea of getting all the information at one point.
Mm-hmm.
When my kids were in fourth and fifth grade, we were using 4-H material, which, by the way, is free and it's really great. And we were learning about insects and the habitats and the what made the difference in the various types of all of them are insects of some sort, arachnids and all of that. Classifying them, pinning them, making collections at fourth and fifth grade. We were actually into college level material, but there was nothing to stop us. We didn't have to go to the next subjects. We just continued on the subjects that until we had exhausted everything they needed to know about insects. So, um, you know, I guess that's a style of learning, but I don't know why in the curriculum they give you a little bit of information in third grade, a little bit more in eighth grade, and then in 12th grade they dig a little bit deeper. But then you go to college. Why don't you just study the college stuff in high school? And that's what led me to try to get dual enrollment for our kids. I saw
Mm,
0 point in doing biology in high school and turning around and doing biology again in college. Let's just do it for college credit and be done with it. So, those are, I have some maybe a little bit broader idea of education, but I don't think memorization of facts is necessary in this day and age. Like you were saying, Jason, it's
sure.
just readily available to kids.
I
Yeah.
also think you make a great point in terms of um, being able to fully explore a subject instead of just doing this shallow survey of these required things that we just only have
Yeah.
time to skim the surface of. I've made a shift recently in our homeschooling, mostly because I tend to be task oriented, and if I have too many things on my list to get through, I become like the drill master, where I'm like, "We've got to move on to the next thing." So I
Yes,
just
she does.
intentionally pared back to fewer subjects per day, and it's
Mm-hmm.
making our pace a lot slower, which at
Yeah.
first was kind of stressing me, until I realized, like, what am I trying to keep pace with? Like, what anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so the the benefit, though, has been that we have time to go deep into whatever we're
Right.
discussing that day. It's not rushed, and if the kids have questions, we can pull up Google and look up more information and, find fun videos on YouTube that show, the animals we're talking about under the ocean swimming around or whatever. And
Yeah.
so it's been really nice to be able to go deep rather than
Mm-hmm.
trying to make forward progress through a certain number of things that I wanted to get through for that
Yeah.
day or
I
week or
rem-
whatever.
I
And
remember.
so, what is the long range goal of subjects? Are you, I mean, I'm just asking this in general, not necessarily of you, Crystal, but is it following the kid's interest? Is it, how do you choose your subjects?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's one I've been pondering. I'm sure some of the moms in the comments have things to say
Yeah.
about
In fact, type in the comments your answer to that.
it.
That's a great question.
One of the things I've been pondering about that is like, are we expecting every student to be equally knowledgeable in every subject? That's just not realistic if you think about it.
Right. No.
And I'd rather my kids have a complete knowledge of something, um, and maybe not as much knowledge in the other subjects that we don't as deep dive in, rather than a shallow knowledge of everything, if that makes sense.
But
Well,
like the one that
yeah.
you just suggested, like, say this year you're studying oceans.
Mm,
Um, Search everything that you can in the oceans, but you've taught them how to look deeper and where to find the information. And so when another
right.
subject comes up that they're interested in, they know how to pursue.
Yes.
So there's no way kids are going to know everything there is to know. You
Right.
just need to teach them how to explore and find the information that's necessary. Gosh, we got it all in the computer.
Yeah, and, our kids,
Every
I don't know about everyone else's kids, but I'm pretty sure this is universal. Our kids, even if we wrap up oceans, the ones that are really interested in it are gonna continue reading about it and looking up stuff about it and
Yep.
adding to their knowledge even once we've moved on,
I guarantee
because we've
you.
showed them how to find information.
I guarantee you that every parent has done this. If they have a cell phone, they've done this. Dad or mom, like, what is the so and so and blah, blah blah, and you're like, oh, hold on a second. Uh,
Siri.
that's called this. Yeah. We've all done that.
I don't even
And if
hide
we're
it.
capable,
I
if
just
we're capable
I
of
go,
doing
"Hey,
that,
Google, what
yes,
is the" I just ask my phone.
yes, yeah.
Well, another
That's because
subject.
we're not required to know everything in order
Right.
to succeed in life.
Well, one
We're
of the
not.
things I hated history going through school.
Enjoy your
Oh,
tutoring.
it was just names and dates. You didn't understand why people fought wars. You didn't know what the purpose was or the political things behind it. And
Hmm.
so I determined early on that we were just going to live in a period for a year. And we
Oh
started
yeah,
off, yeah, we started off, um, well, we took different periods. Like one year we did the
we skipped the
beginning of
period where they
history.
didn't have toilets, right?
Yeah, Abraham and Isaac. Yes, we
We
started
skip.
off there.
Fast forward. Fast forward.
Tent.
We're not
They had
living like
tents.
that.
They didn't even have houses. But it was interesting because that year the Gulf War broke out, and
Okay.
so my kids got up every morning to see what was going on in the
Mm.
world around them on television,
Mm.
because they were engaged in it. And then later on, we did the King Henry VIII, and of course he had 8 wives or 8 wives, 6 wives.
Mm.
King Henry VIII had 6 wives, and so we were watching time life films, which were set in the period, and all of that as part of that, and reading books about them. And then we got into Shakespeare. They were fairly young when we were doing that, but
Mm.
we were reading Shakespeare as a, part of our school. So we incorporated literature and the politics and everything that was going on in that period. We made hardtacks. Then the Mary Rose exhibit came to Tallahassee, and that was interesting because it was supposed to be in California, but they didn't meet the criteria, so they shifted it to the Tallahassee. So Mary Rose was one of King Henry VIII's warships that they were using in war with France in the English Channel, and it sunk. The way it was designed was very poor, and so when it got shot, it started tilting over. It filled up and sank in the English Channel, and they were standing. The king and his court were standing on the shore when that happened. And then that year they had unearthed or unwatered, however you say that, the ship in the English Channel, and they brought the artifacts to Tallahassee. But there's so many things that are going on in the world around you. If you can just bring those things to life in the
Sure.
period that you're studying. So I fell in love with history as an adult because then it became more meaningful. Why were they fighting each other, and um,
Mhm.
all of the political stuff going around about it. So
Well,
anyway,
even what you just sorry, I thought you were finished.
okay.
I was gonna say, even in what you just mentioned, I can imagine all these branch off subjects that our kids would bring up, like, they'd wanna look into the engineering of how the ship was built and why it sank and how they could have made that better to prevent that, and there's so many branch off
Hmm.
subjects even just in that.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, that leads you to math and all kinds of other ways to tangentially work in additional things. It's really it can be really useful adapting to those learning moments rather than having a very rigid um, set path that kind of must be carved and these facts must be memorized in this. I mean, listen, home educate, you guys, homeschool however you homeschool. Do your thing that fits your children the best. If they memorize well and that strengthens them and they take that knowledge and they learn, go do that. Go do that. We are not by any means taking the role of a public school and telling you how to educate your children
No.
best.
But I think
Um,
the
but you have
point was
freedoms to
yeah,
flex
the
and
point was where
exercise.
we started this conversation was parents should be the ones who have the
Absolutely.
authority to decide how they school
Yes.
and what they're teaching their kids,
And for
which is
me,
why the work protecting those rights is so important.
that's what we do.
Yeah.
For us, for the Crawfords, what we do is we emphasize critical thinking, character, and resilience. Um, Not giving up in the face of adversity or when things are difficult is quintessential to many of the problems our society is facing. It's a very specific skill. It's not accidentally learned. It has to be learned under pressure and under duress. And so crafting moments that challenge them and not allowing them to pivot. One of the things our son likes to do when he is playing a game or a board game, we do a lot of game learning, is when it starts to get difficult. He doesn't do this as much anymore, but he used to earlier on when he was really smaller. He would pivot from one to the other. The moment one would get hard, he would pivot. And now that's boring. And he would pivot to another one. And then he would play it. And as it kind of got a little challenging, that one's boring now. It's not boring. And we're going to pick one and do it now. From now on, that's how this is. It's one and through until it's done. And that it made a shift in his. I watched his character change, and it made a shift in his mindset. He became more determined and resilient in other areas with math or handwriting or circles or like it. Whether he's cutting a circle out of a piece of paper, there are little moments where character and resilience for us are quintessential. They have all their lives to Google stuff. Um, it's not that I don't want them to have any facts and be ignorant, but there's so much they're going to be thirsty to learn as long as they're still curious. So I think if I had to add a fourth, I think maintaining their curiosity would be the fourth.
A love
I
for
would
learning. Yeah.
I would put
Yeah.
number one because
Okay. Yeah.
regardless of even the
Yeah.
what they're learning, um, they've got to have that curiosity or teachable moments for parents when
Yeah.
kids ask questions. Is if you shut them down, and I've seen that with parents that have come into home education, the child's need was not being met in a public or private school,
Right.
and so they had to find another way to engage that curiosity because the parent would say they were so curious when they were in at home, and then they got into kindergarten, and they begin to lose that curiosity. Well,
Mm.
especially important for kids, and I think
Mm-hmm.
boys that develop later. Maybe they don't read at 6 or 7, but you watch them, they're doing projects with
Yeah.
Legos or other things, building things, because that's the way their mind works. And it's so
Yes.
important to allow them, like a flower, to just bloom where they are planted,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
and watch that whatever is built into that flower come to the forefront. I think
Yeah.
that's just incredibly important.
I
Yeah.
agree. I heard someone recently say, "What you feed grows, and what you starve dies." And that's a great way of looking at a lens through which to look at, you know, the child's character, mentality, curiosity, the emotional, the social, emotional, and educational emotional aspects of the child and their learning.
I
Crystal, you
also
were going to
like
say something.
I also like what you said about, you know, it watching the flower just sort of open and bloom because
Yeah.
you said I think the way you said it was whatever is packed into that flower. Like when you plant a seed, different flowers grow, right? Not every seed makes the same flower. And I
Mhm.
think that's the problem when you get into a system and a structure is that they expect every seed to produce the same flower or they're
Mm.
watering them with the same I grow plants, and so I'm very familiar with the fact that they don't even all need the same amount of sun or the same amount of water or the same positioning
Yeah.
or whatever, the
Yeah.
same soil composition.
That's right.
So it's understanding that your child has different needs than even one of your other children, um,
Right.
much less somebody else's children. So
Or a
it's
room full of
really
30 children.
yeah, or a room full of 30 children, which
Yeah.
Jason and I have both worked in the public
Yeah.
school environment, and we have seen the challenges with having so many children in one classroom that you just do not physically have the time
Sure.
to really give the attention needed. Um,
Yeah.
so
It's a challenge.
that is what is so amazing about home
Hmm.
education is
Well,
you're not stuck to a structure or a system like that.
that's
Well,
right.
I talk about this as often as I can without overwhelming parents. But I've watched over the years, the first year parents homeschool, they
Mm.
typically bring school home. The second year, because they know their child, they know they don't have to do every problem in the book. The child got it the first time, move on to something else. The third year, they tend to sort of say, hey, my child needs this, and they may or may not use a curriculum. But when they're
Hmm.
really fitting the education to that child's needs and the timing in that child's life that's important, then they're really homeschooling. Now I have friends whose oldest son's a doctor,
Hmm.
or PA. They use standard curriculum all the way through school, and he's done
Okay.
quite well. I'm not
Good.
criticizing that. Some people need
Sure.
that because of their lifestyle. But I'm just saying
Yeah.
that you gain confidence as you homeschool your child, and you'll be more likely to fit that education to that child's needs. So
Yes.
relax. I mean, that's my
Yeah.
message.
Yes.
Relax.
Yes.
Yeah.
Homeschooling should be fun.
Yeah, and don't be
Yeah, that's
afraid to
good.
experiment because I know families that have one child that's on like a structured curriculum and another child that's doing something totally different because they
Hmm.
experimented and figured out that what worked best for each child was, this particular thing.
Yep.
So,
And just like baking a
yeah,
good cake, some experiments fail, and that's okay.
it's okay. You
Learn,
can pivot. You
learn
can
and
always pivot.
adapt. That's right.
I
Move on to the next thing.
Yeah,
That's right.
I and you're
That's
not
right.
stuck having to finish out a complete school year with this curriculum if it's not working. You can pivot at any
Hmm.
moment. That's what's so great.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
and I would just add, I know Jason touched on this, but critical thinking, I think we
Mhm.
emphasize that a ton with
A
our
lot.
kids, but especially because in today's society, you will get even conflicting information if you try to look something up. You'll get
Yes.
conflicting facts, which is really confusing. So,
Yes.
being
It
able
is.
to, one of the things that I used to, when I taught high school essay writing, being able to assess whether something is a reliable source. I'm having to teach that to my elementary school kids because,
Yeah.
like, how do you know whether something is a reliable source of information? How do you know if it is truthful? How do you know? So, um,
Hmm.
all of those things are so important to have as skills that they're going to carry into adulthood. And I think
Absolutely.
even if you don't get to every subject in the typical list of things that they cover in schools. If you produce children that know how to find information, who know how to critically think, and who love learning, they can find whatever else they need. If they decide they want to be a doctor, they'll know how to
Hmm.
pursue everything they need to know in college. Um,
You know, it's interesting because I think you asked this question. What's the kind of asked this question? What's the purpose? Like, what's your goal in teaching them anyway? And I think of Crystal's dad a lot because we're having to teach him how to vet sources of information now, and he's in his
yeah,
late
that
70s.
exist like this
And
when
but
he
you
was
know
growing
what?
up.
But you know what? That man, I don't think he had anything beyond what elementary, middle school education.
Middle school, he dropped out in 7th grade to work on a
Hmm.
cotton farm to help support the family. So
But he worked and worked and sacrificed. And the man was built of character and resilience, and he provided for a family. And
sometimes 3 jobs at once, like,
yeah,
yeah.
amazing, amazing man, an admirable man. But I don't think he would stand up in any room and qualify as the most educated or knowledgeable. And you don't have to be. You just have to survive, get by in life, build family, community, and succeed at the things that are important. To some people, that takes them to college and on and other things. And to some people, like what we focus on with HEF Connect, the nonprofit end of what we do, that takes them to alternative paths, certifications, and job placements, and mentorships, and apprenticeships, and things like that.
Yeah,
And
like
so
for my
there's,
dad, he ended up his main career was a forklift mechanic,
yeah,
and he's actually very clever with machines
very
and
good.
figuring out troubleshooting problems.
Yep.
But that's not something he formally studied in school. He went,
Hmm.
eventually went
No, he
into
just
the
knows it
trades and
all
learned it. Yeah.
from trial and error. It's impressive, actually. But he doesn't ever take credit. He's very humble because he didn't ever receive a formal education that was to that higher tiers of access, and so he doesn't feel as confident. But it's
Well,
not as important as people think
people
it
need
is.
to realize that the public schools don't have all of the answers. They're
Mm.
constantly trying this, trying that. And
Hmm.
a whole generation of kids didn't learn how to do math because they were doing new math. And then one of the years that I was contemplating where my kids were going to go to school because homeschool wasn't an option at that point,
Veronica,
is
that's amazing.
there was a British infant program that I went to visit at an elementary school, and it was working so well that the public school superintendent was having too many people request their kids be in the program. And it was a little like homeschool. Kids were working independently. They had cards and boxes and they could go do this table or that table, but they were kind of deciding when they wanted to do whatever their tasks were. So the public school decided there were too many requests. They shut the program down.
Mm.
Instead of figuring out how to multiply that program into other
Mm.
schools, they didn't want to deal with the transportation,
Very
but
complex.
they didn't have enough spaces. So then, about 3 years later, they brought in at the developmental school, which is a lab school of FSU, they brought someone from England to teach the lab school how to do the British infant program. So it's a whole bunch of experimentation. And Jason, I read this morning that there's considering a bill to do away with the graduation testing requirement for public schools.
Oh
Well,
wow.
think about the kids, and this is what got me so interested in the trades and internships and stuff. Those kids that don't test well, who are interested in creating stuff and not all the book learning that they have in the school, they don't pass the test. Then what? They've spent 12 years in school in attendance, but they don't end up with a diploma. So what happened? Just like Crystal's dad, what would happen to those kids today if they don't have
Hmm.
a diploma?
Right.
They're kind of at a loss, and yet they're products of the public school. So, if you've got a child, especially that loves to work with his hands, um, many of those trades are just awesome for those kinds of kids. Doesn't mean that
Absolutely.
they're not as smart as the kids that finishes as valedictorians. It just means the way they bloom, the way the giftings that God gave them are different than the ones that are valedictorians. Everybody doesn't need to be
Yeah.
a lawyer, a doctor. We need
Hmm.
plumbers. We need,
Oh yeah, we
people
do.
who work in the trades. So
Oh yeah, we do.
And like
I
my dad always felt um bad that he
inferior.
didn't finish school. Like he didn't
Hmm.
feel as smart as other people, but he could do math in his head like lightning fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um so
Alistair does that.
I think it's interesting the way that we measure um
Value things.
education and how we value
Hmm.
different things because one of the things early on that gave me peace as a homeschooling mom was someone told me like even in the public school system how often do they actually finish a complete textbook in the year? Like, there
Mm.
y you don't have to feel like you're failing because you didn't get through everything you planned to get to that year, like
Hmm.
and that's the reality is even the public schools are leaving massive gaps from year to year or even within a year with what they're covering by their
Yeah.
own standards. So, it's just being able to tailor to each child and their
Yes.
interests and their talents is such a gift. And thank you, Brenda, for what you and
Yeah,
Craig
thank you.
fought for that here in Florida.
That's right.
Because I don't think we mentioned this when you said you established or Craig established HEF in 1991, was it? But
Yes.
you
Mhm.
were fighting for homeschooling rights before that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So all the way
Started
back to
in 1984.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so Craig and Brenda were instrumental in getting home education legalized in Florida, period,
Mm-hmm.
in 1985. Um, so just from the very beginning of that option in Florida, it's been Brenda doing that work. So thank you for
And
that.
maybe we'll sprinkle in some more of those conversations as we go throughout this legislative session of some of the challenges that had faced. I was speaking with a parent earlier today as well, and the conversation happened where I was like, it's difficult to raise support because a lot of the things that were big scares, big scary challenges to home education were fought back and dissipated. And it's very difficult to be like, rally the troops on those things that didn't end up happening because you know people connected and had conversations and let's talk about this and did you know about that and what about these parents, and they go, oh well, maybe that's not the best way forward, or we should think about this, and it got shifted and changed and didn't become what it was. So I'd like to maybe as we move forward share some of those. But before we roll out today, because we do have to get on a call, we can't allow this one to go over. Um, and I want to just it's the beginning first of the year, so let's go over. People have been listening; they're with us, so we'll talk about what our goals are this year and what we're fighting for to protect. Um, if you go to our website, flhef.org, that's Florida, and then Home Education Foundation, flhef.org, and you go to information, you'll find a lot of information here from our blog to downloadable docs and helpful links, frequently asked questions. We have specific law blogs. There is a link to find your representative or find your senator. So if you're struggling to find who your person is or your contacts are, you can very easily find them there. But to find out what our agenda is, you go to the forum. We have a live forum that we've created over the past year, and it houses so much information here. Um, the 2025 legislative updates is where you'll find the most up-to-date information on our goals and outcomes or current situations with the legislation that we're working on. And so there you'll see in that section, you'll see our 2025 issues agenda, and you can roll right down through this. There's links throughout it to kind of help with all kinds of stuff. And then um, digital devices for PEP is something that's on the radar. I know that there are some legislators who are also interested in this, so we're working with them to try to make sure. We'd like to see that language in this year. We're not sure exactly what kind of bills. We're watching to the agenda, the legislators' agenda right now to see what kind of pops up and where. There's an application window that it's very tight, and the timeline is very fickle for homeschooling families. So we want to make sure that that is something that
Yeah,
is
if I can just pause
adjusted.
on that one for one
Okay.
second, because I was having a conversation with a mom about this yesterday. I don't think
Okay.
very many parents realize that the wording of the statute that takes effect this year, unless it's
Mm-hmm.
changed, would prohibit anyone from applying for PEP later in the year. So if your kid
Mm-hmm.
is, um, public school and you decide later in the year that you want to pull them out,
Mm-hmm.
you would no longer be able to apply mid-year for PEP because the application window is closing April 30th.
Right. You could pull
And
them out and home educate them.
you could home educate, but you would not be able to apply for the scholarship mid-year.
You could apply for the scholarship the following year,
Yes,
but
yes.
not that same year.
And
Yes.
in addition to that concern, the main concern is that April 30th is just a lot of parents haven't even decided what they're doing yet
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't finished the current school year. So
Right.
we're trying to get that at least extended a little bit to give parents time
Yes.
to make decisions.
Right. Yeah, that's a great. Thank you for breaking that down, and thank you for breaking that down quickly. There's also some payment adjustment dates, adding tutoring organizations to statute for streamlining reimbursements would be great. Home education instructional program definition. There was a definition that we worked on or that should say Brenda worked heavily on um, to get them as approved providers, and we would like to see that definition, the original definition, put into statute, because it had some very specific protections for home education families that we think are vital to some of the shifts that are happening in the school choice expansion. Home education instructional program typo. There's a typo in 1002.394 in the unique abilities scholarship area. So we just, while we're in there, why not clean that up? And then there's very interesting in 402.302, which is about child care. There are very specific programs that are mentioned that and schools and different things like that that are not considered childcare. So childcare has specific regulations. All these other things that fit the definition of childcare that are named not childcare are exempt from those. And so we would like home education instructional programs, because they're not childcare, to be listed as not childcare as well, just to cover the bases. And then 1006.15, this one's huge. We're hitting a massive, constant battle here with. Could you delete the comments that don't belong?
We've been getting
like
these
spammy
spam comments.
Sorry, I got my ADD distracted me. We've been fighting some
Go ahead,
major
I'll
issues
take care of the comment.
with athletics programs across the state that are using so 1006.15 is lovingly known as the Craig Dickinson Act, Brenda's husband, and it gave home education students the rights and access public school sports and athletics programs, which is very, very awesome. In private schools and public schools that they're zoned for, or that they could choose during open enrollment. Well, fast forward after 1996, fast forward 10 years or so, there was a constitutional amendment to Florida's Constitution, which started to put limitations on school academic size to try to make schools more
Class size.
Okay, and then I guess the later one, then I forget which one was first, but it's probably class size first. But then there was 5 or 6 years later, there was another amendment that restricted it even more and put hard limitations on the school and class size, and kind of put parameters in place. But what happened is that had an impact on the reference to the open enrollment parts of that statute. And because it didn't specifically spell it out, the vagueness is interpreted, is open to interpretation, I suppose, because that's what they're doing, is they're interpreting it as limiting both athletics and academics. And they're refusing to allow home education students to play at a school that they do choose, according to open enrollment, by simply just saying that they're at capacity, and they're not transparent about what their capacity limitations are. You can't get a straight answer a lot of times as to what those numbers are, or what the wait list looks like, and how they go through their wait list, and how does this work. And so we're wanting to make some simple adjustments to that to clear it up and restore the clarity and the rights to home education students for them to be able to play ball when it comes down to it.
One
Yes,
thing
ma'am.
also I wanted to add, because we
Yes.
had one legitimate comment on
We have
this
4
post.
minutes. We have to go.
One parent asked if we were also going to be playing defense on any new attempts to remove options from parents and how they use PEP funds.
100%.
So I just wanted to say, yes, we are definitely prepared to fight that fight again if it resurfaces this year.
That's right. Yes.
But we're hoping we'll be able to tackle some of the other things on the list. Some of these things were on last year's list and had to get bumped, like the digital devices. But
That's right. Yeah, we had a lot. We'll make the same judgments as we move forward this year and see how things end up playing out. But yes, this is what's on our plate for our agenda. If the fight becomes very fierce over one particular thing, it may absorb our focus and be something that we push the other ones on to next year. Unfortunately, that means children get older, some graduate, and they don't see the benefits of those in that time frame. But it's always an ongoing battle, and it's definitely one that we're in need of support for. If you look at our website under support here, you'll be able to see the many ways that you can support. If you know anyone who is looking to hit certain tax brackets and different things like that with larger donations, we can accommodate those. We do have a 501c3 nonprofit that houses a lot of the advocacy work that we do. So we have two organizations. The Home Education Foundation is our lobbying organization, and we have HEF Connect, which is more about our advocacy and connecting parents and students with opportunities beyond K-12 success.
Yeah. If I could
So,
just say really quick, because we have at least one person in the comments who's brand new to us and just found us
great.
today.
Hmm.
We are solely supported by donations from parents, but we do not charge parents for any of the advocacy work that we do throughout the
That's
year.
correct.
So even if you are not supporting us monetarily, at any point you can reach out to us if you're having an issue with your district and
Hmm.
you need some support. We do
Hmm.
not charge parents for that, but
No.
we still do need more financial support to
Yeah.
be where we need to be to maintain this. So if you
And
can
Okay.
as they
find
go,
the opportunity to give in your budget, we would appreciate that.
absolutely.
Even
We have.
$5 a month is
Hmm.
going to amount to $60 a year,
Hmm.
but you probably won't miss a cup of coffee if you
Hmm.
just make it at home instead of going to a place that sells it for $5. But it will make a tremendous difference in your
Yes,
freedoms to have
that's right.
somebody in the capital. And
It
Jay
adds
and
up.
Crystal need to support their family. And since most homeschoolers can't afford to just come to the capital and stay for 4 months, it would be great to have an advocate there. So
Yes.
I
And
encourage you to join, even if you think $5 a month is not much. There are over 150 students in the
Awesome.
state of Florida that are registered as home education, and there may be
Hmm.
more. I haven't checked the numbers since they
Hmm.
compiled them in the fall or late
Thank you,
summer.
Veronica.
And so imagine if you just had $60, even if it was $10 a year per student, 150 students times $10
Yep.
makes it possible for us to do a lot more than we're currently doing,
That's right.
and be able to, you know, help
Hmm.
raise support for legislators in various ways.
yeah,
And beyond that, if you keep scrolling down the page, we do have to go, so I'll just want to do this very quickly. But beyond that, if you keep scrolling down the page, there are ways that you can support us that are not financial as well. Sharing our content, sharing our podcast to people that are helpful, that may not know that we're here and what we do, and how long we've been doing it. We are on multiple platforms. These do get up on YouTube and Rumble when we're finished here. You can invite us to speak. The woman I was talking to earlier also invited me to come speak down in Seminole County to one of their groups. We love those opportunities as well. Anything that we can do to help um, parents across the state feel more confident in their choices. Local businesses sometimes care that you're a part of them and they care about you. So, spreading the word that this is what you're about and you want them to support us. We also have options for that as well. And then local campaigns, getting involved with your legislators or local, um, your local politics and your local things. Those relationships can oftentimes be the easiest solution than having to wait for the law to be changed. Sometimes people can be reasonable, and we can connect with them and talk things through. Um, so,
yeah,
hello, Gina. Hello,
super fast.
Isaiah.
I just want to add,
Go ahead.
if you're not already signed up as a site member on our forum, it is free to do that.
Yes.
And please do that because when we move into legislative season, when the sessions begin in March, we will be putting out weekly updates. And if we have a need for parents to reach out to representatives or come speak at the Capitol, anything like that, will be going into the forum. So
Yes.
make sure that you're following there so that you're getting all of the updates on what's happening whenever the sessions start.
Absolutely. Great way to end it. Thank you for that. We are late for our other call, so we're going to go ahead and pull the stream to an end. Brenda, before we go, is there any last words?
No, I just was going to say, if somebody knows a legislator that's worked in the campaign, please let us know, because those
Yes,
contacts make a huge difference for us
they do.
in lobbying.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right, with that, we're going to call it to a close. We thank you guys for your time and attention. We want to say a special thank you to our top sponsors, Arete and Fisher Precious Metals. And we thank you for being with us and sponsoring us in the work that we do. And we thank you all for being here. Like, share, subscribe, and help us spread the word. And have a wonderful, wonderful Monday and the rest of your week. And Happy New Year.